Morning, everybody. How are you feeling? So glad you're here. For those of you, this is your first time, let me extend a welcome to you. I'm grateful you chose to be with us today. And then for all of you that are listening on YouTube or Instagram or whatever social media platform you are, I'm grateful you're listening. I always love when we hear where you're listening from. It brings great joy to us. And happy back to school Sunday. Last week, Cobb County actually started last week. But then some of you private school people, you got to go back too. So you're going back this week. And for all of you parents that made it through another summer, full respect to you, all right, for what you do. And I have been sending all the love to our students. And then today actually is Move Up Sunday for some of our students. So there's some like fifth graders that are going into the middle school over here. And you know that's a leap, all right? When you go from like Rachel and Lauren to Garrett, that's a leap, all right? So if that's one of your kids, I promise you they're in good hands. And I'm just so thankful for our team, our leadership team here, and everybody that pours into the next generation here. I'm more and more convinced the older I get that that's what we're here to do, is pour into the people behind us. Because we're going to be gone. And if we're going to use our energies doing anything, wouldn't it be amazing just to pour into those people where they don't have to unlearn half the stuff that we had to unlearn? And I actually think that's part of the reason, I've said this before, but why we're all walking through so much trauma right now. I mean, think about it. We're the generation that has coined that phrase, trauma. Everything's trauma, religious trauma, right? And why is that? I think there's a reason for that. I think a part of it is because the generations before us ignored it altogether. And I don't know if you know this about trauma, but it does pass on. You don't just die and it ends. I'm telling you, like family trauma passes on. And so it requires a lot of work. And I think that's partly what we're here to do, is to do that deep inner work within ourselves so we don't have to pass it on to our own kids. So for all of you kids and all of you parents that sent kids off this week, all the love. Now, we've been in this series right here called Unlearning Empire, Discovering a New Way to be Human. And we're walking through what is called the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. We're doing pretty well. Today is part 7 of this series, and we have 2 more Beatitudes to go. So if you kind of get a feel for how long this series is going to be, here's what I'm trying to tell you. We are finishing this week and next week the introduction to Jesus' sermon, all right? So when I tell you this is probably a year-long series, I mean we're just ending the intro. And by the way, can we just talk about that intro for a minute? Because Jesus comes right out of the gate, and he blesses those, Empire would say, are outsiders, the overlooked, the forgotten, the weary, the grieving, the exhausted, the excluded, the marginalized, the burned out, and the barely holding on. Jesus starts with you, and he says, all of you people who've been pushed to the edges of the empire, I just want you to know one thing. You are actually blessed. The people everyone assumes are outside God's favor, Jesus says, look again. They are precisely the people God's kingdom is embracing. To everyone convinced they don't deserve God's blessing, Jesus says the blessing is already yours. And that alone is a countercultural shift that we need to reorient our minds, souls, and bodies around. Because the empire has a particular definition of blessing, and it looks like trillionaires. The empire has a particular definition of blessing, and in our world, it would look like neighborhood, fence, 2-car garage, 2 cars, good health insurance. Yep, that's it, a middle-class life. Jesus actually steps in and says, we need to turn this thing all the way over. Those things are lovely, but I need you to understand something. Those that are actually pushed to the edges, that empire would call outsiders or marginalized people, those are actually the people who have God's blessing. And so what does he do? He starts with the who? The poor. Blessed are the poor. That's Luke's version. Matthew expands a little bit, and he says, blessed are the poor in spirit. So let's work through what we've worked through. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Isn't that amazing? He starts with the poor, then he moves over and he says, for all of you that have lost people you love deeply and you're grieving and mourning this morning, I want you to know you're at the top of the list in the realm and kingdom of God. Blessed are the meek. We looked at that word because our culture doesn't even understand that word. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those, talking to you people, who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart. We talked about that last week. The undivided, those who have given their full allegiance to the way of love. Yeah. He says you'll see God. And then here's this week. We got 2 more to go. Here's this week. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Now, let's get into this one, all right? You feeling all right? Yeah. Okay, now we've talked about peacemaking around here a lot. In fact, last Christmas, I think we did a whole series on peacemakers. So, I don't want to take the typical approach, which is, let's talk about the difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking. You've probably heard that. I've talked about it numerous times. In case you're here and you haven't, let's just give a short version here. There is a significant difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking, okay? Now, peacemaking, as we get into it, you'll see, is not just something that avoids conflict. Actually, peacemakers understand that sometimes you have to go right into the heart of the conflict. So when Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, I want to get into exactly perhaps what Jesus and Matthew, as he was writing to this community, was actually getting at. Now, this is the only time the word peacemaker is used in the Bible. Think about that. The only time in the Bible the word peacemaker is used is right here. Now, it's a particular Greek word, aeronopoioi. Aeronopoioi. Now, there's 2 words. It's kind of broken into 2 words. I want to show you this so you kind of see what you're looking at here, okay? Now, the first one, that first part, aerono is peace, and then poioi is to make, create, produce, or bring into existence, okay? I bring that up for this reason. It carries the same root word which we get poet. What does a poet do? A poet creates poetry. What the writer is getting at is that the peacemaker is someone who is like a poet. He or she or they create peace. It is an active, creative word. So you could word it like this. If you wanted another translation, it could go like this. Blessed are the peace creators. Jesus isn't blessing people who avoid conflict here. He's blessing people who create a reality that didn't exist before. Now, when he says this, and when Matthew writes this and sends this off to his audience, no one in the first century likely would have heard this and been like, oh, please, I don't want peace. And honestly, even today, maybe there's a handful of people, but most people I meet aren't like, oh, peace, get out of here with that. Most people I meet are like, yeah, give me peace. I mean, think about how wide this understanding of peace is. I mean, you go anywhere and a lot of people talk about, what do you want most? World peace. You watch a beauty pageant. What would you like? World peace. Everybody wants to go to the Middle East right now. What do you want? I just want peace. I don't know too many humans that wouldn't say, I want peace. I know people in rough marriages right now, and they're like, what do you want? I just want peace. I just want peace. I know people waking up in America this morning, and it's like, we're here again. He's still president. What do you want? Peace. I just want a day. You know what I mean? Can you just give us a day? 24-hour allotment, a period where there's not some news dropping that's absolutely catastrophic. I just want a little bit of peace. You guys okay? Back? Yeah, we're good. They're turning over tables, all right? Most people you meet want peace. And in the first century, I don't think that was much different. In fact, when he said this in the first century, I don't know that a whole bunch of people were like, ooh, scandalous, peace. No, there were lots of people who wanted peace and lots of people who claimed to bring that peace. And so the question was not, do you want peace? Everyone wanted peace in the first century. The question was this, how do you get it? How do you get it? And whose peace are we talking about? Because here's what I want you to know. There were competing visions of peace in the first century. And you may not realize this now, but there are still competing visions of peace in 2026. In the first century, I want to walk you through just 4 different understandings of what they were being confronted with when Jesus said, we're going to be peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers. There would have been some conversation of, ooh, interesting. A rabbi is now saying he's going to lead us to become peacemakers, and the way he describes peace and understands how to come about peace seems totally different than the competing visions around us of how they understand peace. And I don't know that it's much different today. I mean, just look around. Look about all the different people around us that are claiming if you want peace, this is how you get it. I mean, can we just pause for just a moment and talk about what is happening right now in Gaza? I know, hurts to even bring it up, doesn't it? I have to tell you, there's so much going on in our lives. Do you ever have this moment, I feel this way, but do you ever have this moment where you get older and you're sitting down with grandkids or grandkids' kids, your great-grandkids, or even nieces and nephews, and they ask you questions? I did this recently. My grandmother, on my mom's side, she passed away. It's been a few years now. But Katie and I went to her home and surprised her, which looking back now, I realize she's as deeply as an introvert as I am, so we should have never just dropped in like that. But we did bring her a muffin. She used to love Dunkin' Donuts, a brand muffin. That was her jam. And so I went through the drive-thru. She lives down in Palm Beach, Florida, West Palm Beach. And so we were down there visiting, so we went and got her a bunch of brand muffins, and we just surprised her and knocked on the door. And I mean, the moment it was like one of those, I can't believe you're here. And then she's like, I'm not feeling well today. You know what I mean? And it was just like, okay. But we sat on the couch, and it was the first time ever. And that I sat down with her and I said, Grandma, I said, tell me about your life. What was it like growing up to be you? And then we got in conversations of what were your parents like? What did they do during the Great Depression? Did you ever hear conversations about like what was happening in Germany? Tell me, this is like Hitler, was that like a thing living in America? What were you doing? Isn't it interesting how you can look back now and you ask your people, like, what were you doing? I am convinced that with everything we have going on, our kids are going to look back, our nephews and nieces are going, hey, 2 things. 1, what was that thing COVID like? Why does Papaw have a mask on in this photo? What was it? And we're going to be those people going, it was a great plague. Do you know what I mean? We lived in the Oregon Trail. But isn't it weird? They'll see it that way, but in our eyes, we're going, oh, Dr. Fauci, mask, like that was a thing. 7 million people dead? 7 million? 7 million people in the last statistics have died from COVID. And we were all like, what you guys want for lunch? And somehow the world's like, somehow the world's like, you just got to move on. I guess. Maybe we should have a year of grief. But I'm convinced it won't just be that. I think they'll look at us and say, tell me about COVID. And then they'll say, hey, Grandma, what did you do during the genocide in Gaza? What did y'all's church do? What was that like? Yeah. I am convinced it could very well be the largest moment in our generation is happening right before our very eyes right now. And part of it is we try to push it off as distance because we're like, well, it's not really, it's out there, so we have our own problems in here, yes. But I also want to remind all of us there is a direct correlation between what is happening there and our military here. And if nothing else, I understand sometimes you feel like powerless, and what can you actually do? And I know we're all doing everything we can in here, most of us, and I get that. And we're going to talk about it because that's how you work to be an actual peacemaker. We're going to talk about what that looks like in flesh, because I think Dr. King said it best. Let's just go ahead and go there. Dr. King said there's negative peace and positive peace. And he said negative peace is the absence of conflict. You've met those people, right? Whatever you do, don't ruffle the feathers. But just no, we don't want any controversy. Dr. King is like, there will be controversy. Because the absence of controversy is not peace. That is a fake example of peace. Real peace, he said, this probably shouldn't surprise you, justice. That's peace. The path to peace is ultimate justice. And so you work for that. And I know many of you in this room are doing everything you can, and we're going to talk about even more ways that we can work to be peacemakers. Because if there's anything I want for us, it's not just like what will our nieces and nephews and kids and grandkids and all them say about us. I want us right now as a collective to be somewhat of an example of what could a spiritual collective look like if they were filled with peacemakers. Like what would that actually look like fleshed out? And so right now, there are all kinds of competing visions of peace. And I think you see that in Gaza. I think what you see in Gaza right now are people who actually believe somehow they've bought into a lie that this will ultimately bring some kind of peace. And so I want to talk about the competing visions in our world right now, but then I want to parallel them with what's happening in Jesus' time in the first century. So let me get into a couple of these, all right? Because when Jesus talks about peace, he's talking about something that is active here. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to give us 4 different examples. So I want to talk about the Sadducees. Are you familiar with the Sadducees? The Sadducees essentially were religious elites who were responsible for the temple, all right? So if you think about the temple or you think about the church at that time, roughly, we're using Christian language here, they would be the ones in charge of that. Then you had the Pharisees. Now, most of you are familiar with the Pharisees. They're the people that Jesus argued with quite a bit, right? And the Pharisees were those, specifically not those who were like in charge of the temple. The Pharisees were those who were in charge of interpreting the Bible, okay? And by the way, you can kind of understand now even just that parallel of why Jesus found himself in arguments with them. Because they were the ones who upheld the law, interpreting the Bible, and so they would keep people in line. Well, the Bible says, you know those people, right? Then there was a revolutionary uprising in the first century of people called zealots. Okay, so we're going to talk about them. Then you had Rome, which was like the global empire of the day, so we talk about them. And then you had, check it out, a lowly Nazarene named Jesus, who was on the outside edges of the empire, had a very small following, roughly 12 people, a couple of them left. And somehow this little movement looked at each other, and a part of that little movement is who Matthew is addressing here, and he's saying, hey, our little movement, let's be peacemakers. Here's what that's going to look like. Now, here's what you're going to find. I'm not going to be able to go into all the details of how Jesus actually lays out what it means to be a peacemaker today. Because, check it out, the entire rest of the Sermon on the Mount is him going back going, this is what it means to be a peacemaker. So we're going to get into that because he talks about some wild things. He says this, love your enemies. Oh, dear God. No thanks. There's a moment, and this is a controversial one, but we'll talk about it. He says if someone slaps you on the cheek, turn the other one. I'm good. One slap's enough. And there's a whole list of things. And then he talks about how to actually be a person who pursues justice. Yeah, so he's about to riff on what an actual peacemaker, as he understands, like who could actually bring peace to this world. So let's start with these Sadducees for a minute. And these are the people who ran the temple. What did they believe about peace? They believed peace came through preserving order. Okay? Maintaining stability. Don't create conflict. Or, whatever you do, don't upset Rome. Okay? Now, we can make some parallels, but I want to be very careful because I don't want to it would be scholarly wrong to put these people in modern categories because they just don't translate. But we can make some parallels. So here's a parallel that I make when I hear Sadducees. These are individuals that in our day might say something like this. Tell me if you've heard this. You're being too divisive. Okay? Or tell me, does this phrase do something to your spine? We can agree to disagree. Have you ever been in a heated conversation with your in-laws? I mean, parents? You ever been in a heated conversation with your parents, and then you go and you go and you go, and you pour out your like greatest argument, and you're like, oh my God, and it's so clear to you, you're like, boom, yes, that I said it better than I thought I was going to say it. You know what I'm talking about? You ever had that moment? I mean, is that not a great moment? Does the ego not love that? Have you ever been in a discussion and you're trying to like, and then you say it and it comes out better, and then you're even proud of yourself, like, go, boy, that was good. But then it doesn't matter how clear you say it, they are interpreting it a certain way, and then you've laid it all out and you're exhausted, only to reach the apex of the argument for them to say, well, I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree. No. I did not do all this research and work this hard for you just to be like, well, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. Then I always go back to the statement you've heard me share multiple times from who's accredited to James Baldwin. He said, okay, we can agree to disagree as long as your disagreement isn't rooted in my oppression and the denial of my existence. And so, I say to people all the time, we can agree to disagree. No, actually, we can't because bodies are on the line. So you and I will not be agreeing to disagreeing. We just won't be in contact. It's called boundaries. So say goodbye to your grandkids because I don't want them associating with this racism. Here's one. Ooh, this one. I hear what you're saying, Cody. First of all, you don't. No. You hear it, you don't comprehend it. Hear what you're saying, Cody, but just need you to understand, there's truth on both sides. And then we had the ultimate statement, which came out of our moment in American history, and I still to date am flabbergasted by the statement. You just need to understand, there are mighty fine people on both sides. Man, did that not do something to our collective soul? Whew. I mean, man. It's not one for one, but if you lived in the first century when Jesus was talking about being a peacemaker, the Sadducees would have been like, here's what you need to understand. And it would have come from a place of good intentions. I need you to understand that. I don't think the Sadducees were inherently like evil people. I think they were genuinely trying to keep some sense of order. Now, I also want to pause here and I want to give some serious grace to people in this room who are Enneagram number 9 people. If you're not familiar with Enneagrams, but Enneagram number 9 are the peacemakers. All right? And those types of individuals, as they understand it, are people who just don't want any conflict. I get it. So hear me. I don't love conflict. Can I say that? I don't. I know some people who do. I do. And a lot of them are online. Have you met those people? I'm like, I always pause. I'm like, what job do you have? Where you have the ability to stay online all day long. And a part of me is sometimes I watch my friends because I don't engage comments. It's rule number 1. I laid that out years ago. Our friend Roberto told me, he said, you're never, ever going to make it if you read the comments of the stuff you post. And I was like, are you serious? He's like, oh God, never Google your name, the church's name. No, stay out of that. He's like, because you will die a death of paper cuts, and it will be the worst death possible. So that's my rule. If you notice, I do not engage. I do my work. I throw all myself into it. I put out what I feel like needs to go out, and then I stop, and I don't. And then when people come to me through the side door, like, did you see this? I'm like, that door's locked. I don't want to know. I've told you this 100 times. I have my people who matter, and when they come to me and say, I'm concerned about something, I listen, okay? But every now and then I lean in and I meet people and I look online and I watch my friends, and my friends engage their comments, and the thing is, some of it's really lovely and helpful. But then a lot of it I'm like, hey, you do know you're wrestling with a pig. You've heard that, right? That pig is loving what you're doing right now. There are some people who just love conflict. And I don't care what you say, it's not about the conversation. There's no change or progress being made. It's just they love controversy. And I think that has deep levels too. There's lots of reasons for that. Why? What kind of home did they grow up in? What kind of space did they come out of? I'm saying to you, I don't overly enjoy conflict. I do my best to ignore it. I come from a family that ignored it way too much. I come from a family where anything that ever happened, it was like, let's have a sit-down conversation. And in my mind, I'm like, ooh, let's work through the conflict. Because here's the thing. I have found working through the conflict can be the path of transformation. And what I want more than a relationship that is like superficial, I want an authentic relationship where I can be honest with you and you can be honest with me and we can have these conversations. But I come from a family of a world that's like, they'll say, let's have a sit down. And I'm like, all right, here we go. But then the sit down is, we will never talk about this again. You know what I mean? And then it's never addressed. And then the kids grow up and it's lingering in the air. Do you know what I'm talking? It's never addressed, but it's fully present in the family dynamic. And then, tell me, God, therapy, we are cooking right now. Then you walk into the family get-together, and everyone's walking around it, dancing, whispering in the corner about it, like, well, whatever you do, don't bring that up right now. And then it starts forming within us this thing, and we have to pretend and fake and become people that we're not. And then the next thing you know, you're a decade beyond it, and you find yourself in therapy still trying to process it until your therapist goes, oh, yeah, we should address that. Yeah. I think this is what Jesus is getting at here when he says peacemakers. One of the competing visions were the Sadducees going, hey, here's the thing. Whatever you do, don't be divisive. Unity is the word of the Sadducees. Now, Dr. King had a fuller statement than what I gave you. And I think he nailed it when he said it like this. This might be some of the greatest words Dr. King ever said, in my opinion. He said, there is a tendency to over-spiritualize the way Jesus spoke of peace. God, isn't there? We're going to get into that one in a second, the internal version. There's a tendency to over-spiritualize the way Jesus spoke of peace. When the peace of Christ is confined to the private realm of individual emotions, it is not taken seriously as an alternative political vision for humanity. Now, Dr. King said this, I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the blacks' great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the KKK, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. Wow, you hear how strong that is, right? He's saying the problem with not getting peace in this moment is not necessarily the KKK member. Now, he's a problem. But the problem is the moderate who sits in the middle and says, whatever you do, don't cause any trouble. Wow. So what I would like to say in our world of competing visions of peace is beware of any peace that asks the wounded to stay silent so the powerful can stay comfortable. Peace without justice isn't peace. It's the preservation of the status quo. And the quickest way to maintain an unjust system is to tell the people suffering under it to stop making everyone uncomfortable. One protects the world as it is, the other helps the world be created as God intended for it to be. Then you had the Pharisees. The Pharisees were the Bible-believing people. They were the religious teachers who interpreted the Torah. If the Sadducees were peace through preserving order, the Pharisees' understanding of peace was through personal purity. Fix yourself. Morality. Remain pure. Now, this is certainly a part of it. The writer in the book of James says, where do quarrels and fights come from? Well, deep within you. We've talked about this before, but I am convinced there is a lot of truth in what the Pharisees are getting at in their understanding of peace. The problem with their understanding of peace is they stopped inside themselves. Okay? But what they were saying was, if there's ever going to be peace, it must start in you. 100% absolute truth. Yes, love that. But it cannot remain in you. But it definitely needs to start in you. So James says, the quarrels you see out there don't just come from nowhere. They arise from the quarrels that are within you. So, translation, the external is always mirroring the internal. You've heard people say this. I think it's true. I've heard people all the time be like, whoa, God brought Donald Trump to America for a reason. And I don't know, there's a lot of problem with that language. I'm also at a place in my life now as a pastor where I don't talk much about God anymore because it's problematic on many levels. And I also think it just removes all of our responsibility in the matters. Because what I would like to pause and say, God didn't bring Donald Trump here at all. I'll tell you who did, evangelicals. So own that part of it first. Stop putting on God what we've done to ourselves. Why do we as Christians, as people who follow Jesus, find ourselves defending the divine so much? I am still convinced when we die, the divine's going to be like, why did you all bring me into all this? But a part of their argument is God brought him in. And I would just pause and say, first of all, God didn't do that. They did. But now that he is here, I'll tell you what, I don't think Trump is to be wasted. The worst thing that could happen is this moment happen, and then we all collectively think when he dies or resigns or quits or whatever, that the world's just fixed. That's actually going to be our biggest problem. I'm telling you right now, our biggest problem is we are now moving into a post-Trump society, and we're going to think, we did it. He's gone. And I'm going to tell you, friends, hear me when I say this. That man is not the problem. It is much deeper than him. But what he has done, and he's unconscious of it in my opinion, what he has done is he has become the embodiment of what is deep within the conscious of our country that has been ignored. And the conflicts you're seeing in the external, if you see it as a body, are coming from somewhere. And so when I look at Gaza, when I look at Iran, when I look at what's happening all around our nation right now, when I look at all of it, I'm like, you can tilt it and see it this way. Oh my God, think of what's happening right now in America the last decade as one long therapy session. I do this often. You don't get a break from the therapy session. Every day you wake up, and imagine if you woke up and your therapist is calling you going, hey, report to my office in 10 minutes. Hey, can you give me a second? I'm just scrolling. There's like a landscaping thing that I'm looking at. Y'all see those, right? Y'all get torn up. Y'all get go down side angles of like on your feed on Instagram, and then you find yourself watching things. I'm in a place now where I'm so anxious. I've been watching how someone makes candy. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like he's an old guy like Dollywood. Do you know what I mean? And he's flipping the sugar around on the plate. And I'm at home going, oh my God, this is so good. And then he's like, we're going to add a little color. And they throw a purple one in there. And it's like, oh my God. And that's how you get candy canes? And there's a part of me that's like, that's what we need. More candy cane makers. That's a peacemaker. That's someone who's like, I got you. Let me make some candy canes to give your mind a break. But then it's like every day you wake up, imagine trying to scroll and get yourself some of that. And then the therapist is like, no, report to office because you don't have a choice. And so I have been tilting it going, what if the last decade and beyond, we know it's beyond, but what if the last decade has just been one large therapy session that we've gotten into, and we have to make some decisions as a corporate body what we're going to do about it because the therapist keeps showing up and pointing out things deep within our unconscious soul, and it's rising to the surface, and here's what's even more crazy. It's being embodied before us. And we all have decisions to make. What are we going to do about what we're seeing? And so I absolutely, certainly believe that it starts within us. But the problem is, if we just see it and we say, I'm going to work and do all the work and make sure I'm good. At some point, it has to move from us out into the exterior, the external. Because the external is a mirror of the internal. So if I were summarizing the Sadducees, would be a modern translation, be something like this. It's not a gun problem, it's a heart problem. You hear that, right? That can sound deeply spiritual. Oh, well, it makes a good point. I watched, like you did recently, another mass shooting. Now we don't even, how quickly we've moved into, we don't even talk about them. They happen all the time now. Used to just be one-offs, now they're just all the time. But I watched one recently at an In-N-Out. And then how they praised another man with a gun who stood up and he had his jean shorts on. And he's like, pow, pow, and I watched it. And I was like, God, America. America. And so, again, the uproar. It's not a gun problem. Because for every bad man that has a gun, you need a good man that has a gun. It's not a gun problem, it's a heart problem. And I always just pause, and my brain is always just like, I don't understand. Why are we choosing? Why do we have to choose? What if it could actually be both of those? Yeah, it is a heart problem, that's for sure. We definitely need some transformation. Some people need some deep therapy. Some people need to be changed at a deep level, full repentance, yes. But also, for those who continually insist on being this way, we should probably get some laws in place that actually help carve the out-of-control ego that these people have. Yeah, what if we did both? And I'm always amazed at the same people who are like, it's a heart problem, or it's a gun problem, or a heart problem, not a gun problem. I'm always amazed. Those are also the same people going, but we need some strict laws around abortion. Amen. So wait, hold on. Is that a heart problem? Well, let's talk about it for a minute, because I'm seeing what I guess you would call this, here's a word, contradiction. The Pharisees would probably say something like this, good intentions, but they would say, stop talking about politics, just preach Jesus. The problem isn't personal transformation. The problem is when you stop with personal, private transformation. If your holiness never confronts injustice, it is worth asking whose version of holiness you are practicing. A gospel that saves souls but never challenges systems leaves empire completely unbothered. Personal transformation is the beginning of the good news, but public transformation is where it always inevitably leads. Then you had the Zealots. So you had the Sadducees. These are competing visions. They'd be like, oh my God, just don't, if you want peace, just don't disrupt, don't cause any problems. Then you had the Pharisees who were like, you know what? You got to change yourself first. Great, lovely. Then you had, in the first century, that would have been floating around, the Zealots. Now, the Zealots were a bit of a revolutionary group that rose up in the midst of the Roman Empire. They had a particular version of how to get peace too. They called it peace through violent revolution. So this would be, check it out, armed resistance. All right? And this is somewhat of a reoccurring temptation throughout history. And let me say this, their goal wasn't evil. What they really wanted was liberation. The problem wasn't what they wanted. The controversy was how they believed it could actually come. So modern translations, these would be people who would hear Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and they would be like, oh, that's lovely and cute, and I'm glad it helps, but it's not realistic. Okay? They would say, Dr. King's nonviolence or Jesus' way of nonviolence is passive, and it really doesn't work in real life. And there are levels of me that if there was a temptation for me, full transparency, this would be the one. I'm a pastor. I have sat in circles with other pastors at Emory going, so how many of y'all own guns? Because if push comes to shove, should we? There's a lot of historical movement around what happened during Hitler's regime. And different theologians, even in that time, who did everything they could, but then at the very last moment began to believe that maybe the only way is this way. And so when Jesus stands up and he says, blessed are the peacemakers, you had the Sadducees, you had the Sadducees, and then you had like the Zealots, and honestly, I think they were some of the greatest temptation for this small revolutionary movement of Jesus followers. And I think many of them were very tempted to lean into this direction. The Zealots weren't wrong to long for justice. But I believe they were wrong to believe you could build God's future using Caesar's methods. Audre Lorde probably wrote the best on this. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Here's all I want to say about it. Violence may defeat the enemy. I'm not denying that. But ultimately, it will never create peace. Then you had Rome. Pharisees, Sadducees, Zealots. What other large piece of humans in that moment were screaming, we have the way of peace? Well, you know Rome's. Rome's was peace through domination. This was the Pax Romana. Peace through strength. They needed a strong man. A whole civilization will die tonight. This is Rome. And what I want to say to you is empire doesn't create peace. It simply moves the violence somewhere else. Hear me when I say that. We need an education in this. Empire doesn't create peace. All it does is move the violence somewhere else. So, push it out of the center of your view, and then the people may begin to believe there's peace. But you did not bring peace. You simply moved the conflict away from the vision. And there is a significant difference. The people at the center will call it peace because they no longer are the ones paying the price. But if someone else has to suffer so I can feel secure, that is not peace. That's empire. And empire creates toxicity and more harm and more danger and more deaths. And there is a difference between all of those paths of peace and what I believe Jesus is arguing for in this moment. Jesus, what did he do? He showed up with his little group of people and he said, okay, if we're going to be peacemakers, I know there's all these different visions of peace that are floating around. I'd like to offer you one myself. And he would be referencing a Hebrew word, and here it is. You've probably heard this one, shalom. And what is shalom? It's not merely peace or the absence of war. This is, and here's the word for it that we would probably translate, wholeness, completeness, justice, that's the word, flourishing, harmony, right relationships, creation ultimately healed. It was the image that Isaiah gave when he said the lion and the lamb could lay down together. It's the image Isaiah gave when he said swords can be beaten into plowshares. It's the image that Amos gives us when he says, let justice roll down like a river. And how does one be someone who creates that type of shalom in the world? Well, we're about to look at it through the remainder of the Sermon on the Mount, but I can give you a few. First, tell the truth. Share your resources. Some might call that democratic socialism. Move toward the conflict, not away from it. Seek and work for justice at all costs. Stand between the vulnerable and those harming them. I want to pause there. Thank God for you people in this room that have levels of privilege, that you have stood between the rocks being thrown at harmful individuals to harm people. Thank God for many of you in this room who have chosen to not just sit in your privilege, but you've been awakened to the reality that you've been given a gift that you could actually be a peacemaker. And so you have skin in the game. And for many of you, there's been a great cost. And I think that's who Jesus is speaking to. It's the people who use power to protect, not dominate. It's those who are using their voices to speak up for those who have been ignored. It's those who understand that when conflict arises, there are always creative solutions to be found. And what I want to say about this shalom is God doesn't bring shalom by dropping it out of heaven. God forms people who carry it into neighborhoods, families, politics, economics, and enemies. What Jesus is saying is, blessed are those who refuse to believe that hatred is inevitable. Violence is necessary, and domination is the path to peace. Blessed are those who dare to imagine another way. Blessed are those who spend their lives cultivating shalom wherever they go. And this isn't easy work. This week I watched, like many of you did, for those that aren't aware, there's a lot happening around our world right now. A lot that's coming. And I thought on a practical level, what does it look like for us to be peacemakers? Honestly, on a practical level where we live right now, what does it look like? And there are a million different ways. And this week I sat and watched yet again so much transpire. But one of the things that caught my attention this week was what's happening in Mississippi. And there are a list of black lives lost in the state of Mississippi. And one of those this week was a 29-year-old, Tasia, found hanging from a tree in Mississippi. I don't know if you've been following this, but it's important to give some attention to it because a lot of news outlets aren't, but there has been a rise of finding people hanging from trees. So let's call it what it is, lynching. Now, here's what's even more bizarre is every time it's looked into, they walk away with the same conclusion, suicide. And even more heartbreaking is, this is real, I had to dig to even find it. Because again, it's like, well, we need to talk about Trump's new wig. Do you understand what I'm saying? Notice what's happening. Watch it. Just watch what's happening. The man's gotten more attention about some new hair follicles that he has that makes him look younger than a 29-year-old hanging from a tree. So notice that, observe that, watch how that works. And so, I see those things like you. The last United Nations report was somewhere roughly over 75,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Over 18 of our soldiers have died in the war in Iran so far, that we know of. And one article has said that close to 10,000 people have died in Iran, and what we know of factually is over 100 were in an elementary school. Yeah. It's in that world, in that moment right there that we are called right now, us collectively as a community, to be peacemakers. And it begs the question, what does one do? Well, there are lots of things we can do. I do want to pause here and just say, I'm on a countdown till November. It doesn't end all in November, but I will tell you, if you want to be a peacemaker, there is a step to take. And this is why it's so incredibly serious. I never realized how much we get to shape the future of the country. And so, yes, part of it is I'm on a countdown. Man, I've already been doing my homework now that we know who the people are. And I'm watching what you're watching right now. I'm going, what is it? Let's talk about the pathways to peace. I have been doing some serious homework on New York right now. And I'm watching Mamdani and I'm going, this man is fascinating. Hear me, he's not the Savior. We know this, right? No one's like, we got a new Jesus. But it is really interesting how much the empire has resisted his understanding of peace. And then when you get into it, you realize, oh, that's because he just taxed the wealthy. But check it out, within weeks paid off the debt. And check it out, kids get childcare. Yeah, and here's what's even more bizarre, is it seems to be working. And the people at the top are going, no, it's dangerous. And this is why you see a rise. Hang with me. You see that rise of, and here's the word, communist. We know that. Come on. We know that word, right? I mean, that word has some baggage, doesn't it? So imagine just taking that word and be like, I'll tell you right now, I watched this week what happened in Michigan. And this is even more bizarre. Let's do this? I'll tell you something else I love. And and when I say I don't love controversy, I kind of do. As long as it's not mine. But I'll tell you something else I love. I love watching the Democratic Party right now squirm in their seats. Because you have this party who's like, we worked hard to get to where we are, and this will be the establishment of the Democratic Party, and here's what it looks like. And all of a sudden, you have a generation of people going, actually, we'll decide. This is what's happening right now. And so it's shaking people in the top hierarchy of the Democratic Party because all of a sudden we're going, hey, look at Michigan. Look at New York. Look down in Texas. We've got some things cooking here, right? And I'm just telling you, I'm very hopeful because I do think something new is emerging out of this. And I think we play a critical role in this. To be peacemakers. To actually be humans who go out and create peace. And so, that looks like a lot of different things. I believe with all my heart, at its essence, making peace or creating peace is working for justice. And I need you to hear me when I say this. I don't think that means you have to wake up every morning and join Jeff on the square. I just want to throw that out. Hear me, because a lot of you are like, we got to do it. People, comparing yourself to Jeff is like comparing yourself to Jesus. Okay? I don't recommend it. No, that's Jeff's role. He's in a particular season of life where he's like, this is what I believe can actually help produce justice. Some of you in this room are like, I wish I could do that, but check it out. You may be able to join him one day. But right now in your season, you know what your task is? One of the steps of being a peacemaker is waking your kid up in the morning going, you ready for school? Sitting down at breakfast and going, hey, let's talk about what happened yesterday. So you had a bully? How do we deal with bullies? Oh, that's foundational. Imagine if someone had sat Trump down at a young age and said, just follow me, and said, young man, do you know what greed is? Well, imagine that. That's what I'm saying. Peacemaking comes in all kinds of different ways. And I'm just here to tell you, you are people, parents, you are launching rockets into the world. And that is the perfect illustration. This is not to play with. You are launching a rocket. We don't need more rockets running into the moon. We need them going where they need to go and coming back when they need to come back, right? We need them functioning the way they're here to function. This is a serious opportunity you have as a parent. You are launching something fierce into the world. And for you to be a peacemaker, this is where it starts. And so for all of you, I get it. I talk to people all the time like, God, how do I create peace? I'll tell you, this is hard, but hang with me. Using discernment when you're in that setting where you're around your business buddies and they start using racist language. What if you didn't sit in that moment going, just whatever you do, don't cause trouble? No. What if you did cause trouble? What if you were the only one who said, hey, guys, that will not be said in my presence. That's racist. Yeah, I know. Yes, that peacemaker. What does it look like for you in your job? This is what I believe Jesus can. So let me close here. You guys, thanks for leaning in, by the way, and listening. And I'm aware of the fact that there's multiple competing visions when we talk about peace. I do believe as we walk through the Sermon on the Mount, you'll begin to see contextually in the first century, under a Roman Empire, how Jesus actually worked out, fleshed out what being a peacemaker looks like. But let me just close with this in light of what we're saying today. Jesus says something beautiful. He says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Isn't that great? Which leads to the question, are people that aren't peacemakers not children of God? You know the actual phrase he uses here? Children of God is the modern translation. It's actually son of God. Sons of God, daughters of God. Oh, Caesar was called the Son of God. Caesar was the one presented as bringing peace, salvation, good news to the world. So what is this writer getting? I think he's saying something like this. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. The people who truly bear the family resemblance of the divine aren't emperors who conquer nations. They're ordinary people who make peace. Jesus isn't telling us how to get into God's family here. He's showing us what the family resemblance looks like. So we're done here. Yesterday, I was driving to my in-laws, and we were hanging out with the nieces and nephews started school. They're in a private school, so they started last Friday, and we were driving up there, driving back. I haven't left my house in a couple of weeks, other than to come here, because I've been in a writing cave with the editor working on stuff. And so for me, a commute means going downstairs to my office, which honestly, hear me, all you people that are, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I don't even want to drive here to the office. And the longer I stay in my cubicle, the worse it gets when you come out. But I just read a statistic where Atlanta is actually rated number one as the most stressful place to drive in the United States. I'm like you. Right now, I just became aware that 285 is shut down because they're doing the work. So some of you tried to get here this morning. You're running in late. You're like, what's going on? 285's they've been working on that since the Big Bang. Like it's just a, and I'm just like, what? And then it seems to be no progress. You know what I'm talking about? You're like, well, they're working on it. Like, yep, nope, still got work to do. And we live in, and it's just, has anybody else experienced this? I don't know what's happening, but people, oh my God, I don't know if we're raising up new drivers by just the thousands, but it is. So I drove there and I drove back and I just told Katie, I said, oh my God, tell me this isn't my age. I can't hardly drive anymore. I can't do it. It took me an hour and 10 minutes when it should have taken me 25. And is this like everyone's on my nerves? And it could be you. I don't even know. I sometimes am like, Katie, let me pull up. And I am as passive aggressive as they come. But I have one little pet peeve, just one. I have a couple, but this one, it's when you drive really slow in the passing lane. Yeah. And you've heard this, I know it's like a preacher riff or whatever, but just hang with me. I instinctually got it, like I did, like I was conditioned. I mean, it's weird because they gave me driver's license and you take a driver's test where I came from, and they never told me like, hey, but there was a question on the test. I distinctly remember passing lane, you don't drive slow in the passing lane. So it's like, oh, I don't know that people know that the left lane is a passing lane. So I become an educator. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, they don't know. So I give them the benefit of that. They don't know. So I will wait, and when they don't go, I'll just help them out. So I'll pull beside them and look at, you know what I mean? Like I will glance over at them. 9 times out of 10, cell phone in hand. You know what I'm talking about? Then and here's like, how do you educate? Then I'll get in front of them, slow down. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this. Slow down, cut on my blinker, get over and let them pass. That's how it's done. Okay. I say all this. One of the things that Katie, real talk people, I will be like, why is this person going 25? The speed limit's 45. I'm not breaking the speed. The speed limit's 45. Why are we doing 25? And I'll kind of get close. And Katie will always lean over and goes, you know they could be a church member. She knows it's the only thing that because I would die if I was on your rear end, pulled up beside you, looked over, and you're like, hey, pastor. Well, that would be the worst case scenario for me. But I was on my way home yesterday, and as I was on my way home, I got behind somebody driving so slow. And I decided, I was like, Katie, look at this. I pulled out my phone, and I took a snapshot. You're not going to be able to see it, but I want to read this to you. Because it was one of those cars that had stickers everywhere. So here was the first one I noticed. I heart Jesus. Another one, no Jesus, no peace, N-O. Then below it, K-N-O, no Jesus, no peace. Then here's one, repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand. Then there was a sign inside the car taped to the window that said, people get ready, Jesus is coming. $25, I'm reading it and I'm looking over at Katie. And you know, your mind rolls because you're like, I know that person. Like, I don't mean I know them, but I know them. I have people in my family like that's, and for all of you who, if you have a car out there right now that has these stickers on it, oh, my apologies. But here's what I'm trying to say. Family resemblance, hang with me. You can put as many stickers as you want on the back of your car. You can place in your profile, husband, Christian, follower of Jesus, Psalm lover. All that's lovely. But basic 101 here. Basic 101. How does someone see family resemblance according to the writer here? It's being a peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. You want to look like the divine? Keep pursuing justice. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. Okay, if you're new here, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to Vinings Lake. My wife and I are going to be right over here. Would love to meet you and find out how you got here. Also want to remind you of a couple things. One, you heard the announcement at the beginning that Katie made, which is so fantastic, about a vigil that we have coming up with VL Cares. If you have questions about that, Jess is here. She's sitting right there. You can also just scan this QR code, but would love for you to be a part of that on a Saturday. I can't wait to see all that they cooked up and part of. And there are tickets, so it's like $10. It's cheap, but check it out. All that money is going to a family to actually help them. All right, so it's like a fundraiser of some sort. So I hope you can be a part of that. So that's coming as well. And then I want to remind you, we will be back next Sunday. Okay, so we'll be here, and then we'll finish up the Beatitudes. All right. Here's the next one we're going to. Blessed are those who are persecuted. Okay, which we all know what that's like in America. So we're going to talk about persecution, and cannot wait to get into that, okay? So that'll be next Sunday. I hope you all have a fantastic day. For all of you going back to school, all the love, grace, peace, everything. Peace be with you.